Hello everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations, and you're with Simon today. And we're going to be doing a new moon Aquarius video and kind of just sharing my insights and thoughts and what I've been processing along with Jen in terms of how we can use this new moon to plant new seeds of empowering experiences, and what is the transformational potential that exists within this new moon. So as always, I've got this picture, and it's a really great example of what I want to talk about today in terms of the theme of this new moon. Aquarius as an archetype has many functions, and you can go on the internet and find different ways in which this energy can reflect itself. But what I want to do today is really capture the essence of it. Okay. The imagery of the snow and this path that is highlighted with I actually draw it over here. Can you see the road and the snow falling? And there's this tree that exists in a kind of isolated experience. This is what I chose, this kind of isolation. And there's illumination that exists at the top here. And again, as you kind of move backwards over here, you get to notice that it becomes darker, And this to me is a really great way to actually connect with the essence of what Aquarius actually is in the human experience, right? When I reference, or when I talk about the darkness over here, I'm talking about when we look at Aquarius as an archetype and we look at it through the human psyche, we're seeing that there is a relationship between what exists outside of a boundary and how that space that is existing outside of a boundary is interacting with what is existing inside the boundary. Okay, so we have a boundary, which is your natal chart. This is something I want to talk to you about later on, because I don't know if you've seen, but I've just advertised that I would be doing a Evolutionary Astrology introduction course, a free course that's 2 days long. I'll tell you more about it. And one of the things that I'm putting in there is how to look at the natal chart from the perspective of the circle. So imagine a circle right now, and the circle has space inside of it, and then there's space outside of it. Well, Aquarius to me at one level is the interfacing, is the essence of something that is interacting with the circle, the boundary, and the boundary being Saturn, the boundary being your physical body, the physical limitations that you have, the physicalness within our life, right, the structure. And the deeper we go from the boundary into deep space, right, we find archetypes like Pluto and Neptune and beyond, and it becomes more frozen as we kind of leave the sun, and the further we go away from the sun, the colder things get. So what this is really reflecting to right now in terms of the Aquarius archetype is that if you look at Aquarius, the opposite sign is Leo, which is the sun here. Okay, and the frozenness is the experience of emotional situations or happenings that through our life we have been unable to process. Okay, so emotional experiences or experiences that we've been unable to process that then get pushed down into the subconscious, the individuated subconscious, to use Jung's terms, and it exists there until we are able to allow for it to come back to the surface, to be reprocessed, to come back into our physical self. And so the further away that we in a sense push away the emotion, the colder or more repressed it becomes. And this is not negative, this is just the nature of how our emotions, when we're unable to process them, become stored in a place for later thawing, right? Thawing out, because that's what happens when it snows. It's cold, and then when the sun moves across it, or light moves across it, or heat moves across it, it thaws out. So it's this beautiful interface between something that exists within our subconscious that comes to the surface periodically through transits and activations, and it through the validation and recognition and the illumination we give to it, we allow ourselves to thaw out whatever the emotion was. I mean, this is primarily the work of healing when you go into healing post-traumatic stress responses and other experiences that essentially we are unable to process at that point in time. Okay? So this darkness over here is the illumination, ironically or paradoxically, of the further we get away from the sun, the colder the temperature, the deeper the emotion is. And Uranus talks about that interchange between how we are able to access what is essentially actually existing at a Plutonian level, i.e. at a deeply frozen level, a disempowered level. And Uranus is awakening our senses to understand this deeper self that is inherently with us. One of the biggest things that I want to do with my channel, and one of the things that I want to do with this work, is for us to see astrology as not only this beautiful healing tool, but this opportunity to really open ourselves up to a deeper self that is existing within us. And astrology is a doorway for us to do that. But if we're not approaching it that way, we're just simply staying on the surface in a very detached, kind of intellectualized, Aquarius means this, but where's the essence of what that actually represents to us in our lives? So what has this got to do with this new moon? Well, the sun is in Aquarius, the moon's in Aquarius, Mercury's in Aquarius, Mars is going to conjunct Uranus very, very shortly, and I'll be putting up the chart for us soon. But I want to work with this imagery more, because what this imagery is also pointing to is that on this path of human experience that we have, there is a sense of self, or an aspect of ourselves, that when we recognize as something that is not linear, but something that exists in a almost like quantifiable, it exists in a quantifiable state. It means that there are multiple aspects of ourselves that are existing in different time spaces, and every single one of those aspects wants to be expressed. It wants to be thawed out. And it's not necessarily a therapeutic thing where we need to heal those frozen aspects of ourselves, but it's more along the lines that each and every single one of these deeper aspects or fractals of ourselves that exist, they want to be expressed. They want to be lived through in the sun. The sun wants to give life force to it, and we want to give life force to it. And so part of this path of the human experience is allowing emotion to be a vehicle for these beautiful aspects of creation to express itself in human form. So the human form gives this context, and when we observe ourselves at different times of the day, we can have different aspects of ourselves present. And the more that we can allow for those present states to be integrated within the way that we experience life, we actually begin to see this very weird mold of structure that we live within that holds us back from fully understanding the depth of what we are and what wants to express itself through us. And of course, this is like, the essence of the Aquarius archetype, there is this individuation process that wants to illuminate itself. And this trine between Aquarius and Gemini in the natural zodiac, and then of course the trine from Aquarius to Libra, and then the Libra trine from Gemini to Libra, like I said, creates this Earth Trinity. Not Earth Trinity, Air Trinity. And you can see this interaction in life of, in like diversity, Gemini, and expression of individuation linked with diversity, Aquarius, Gemini, and how that then becomes the way that we interface with the multiple ways and the diverse ways of individuation that exists within the world. So you can have, just look at life and look at the multiple expressions that exist. It is natural there, and our individuation process is about giving breath and life to those aspects of ourselves. But we first have to recognize that as what it is that we are. And so this tree that sits in this center over here is, to me, a reflection of our unique Aquarius, Uranus, individual journey that we all carry with ourselves, that is very, it's very special to us, that it almost points to a part of us that wants to shine in a brightful way, of course, and at the same time it wants to grow through us and into us, and we want to house that. And we all have this uniqueness within ourselves. I'm trying to point to this idea of purpose being something that is not specifically linked with an outside definition, but more about the fostering of or cultivating of unique, individuated expressions that are coming through us, that ultimately is what it means to be unique. And it's not about an active sense of, okay, I need to be unique, so I'm going to be different, but it's more about an allowance of what is already there, and the unique path and growing of a tree that is amongst other trees. And in its similarity to all other trees, it's individuated because of its unique position that is natural there, that is inherent there, and that it's part of this web of other trees, that the other trees amplify its uniqueness because the other trees are, in a sense, holding space, just as Aquarius correlates to groups, for uniqueness. And all other trees and all other things in life hold space for all other things to reflect their own uniqueness, and all they have to do is just be it. And this is the kind of the deeper truth with Aquarius, is this beingness versus this need for individuation or to stand out or to do something different. It's almost like a subtle process of going through the polarity point of Aquarius, which is Leo, and where our sense of growing out of narcissism, right, or the essence of the early stages of self-validation being externalized, and the need for being recognized. So doing things extremely in a sort of, I need to do this because I'm Uranian kind of way, and that pointing to still an outsource of need for recognition or validation. So beingness being a very big key of part of the storyline. Now, as we kind of explore this Uranian context over here, let me put up the chart for everybody so that, we can have some astrology. I want to first point to this Capricorn signature here of Venus just entering Capricorn, Saturn 15 degrees, Pluto 21, South Node at 26. So there's a whole huge, storyline of Capricorn, and I'm sure by watching many other videos of astrologers and stuff, you've gathered the fact that this is going to correlate to structure and so on and so forth. But I invite for us to also connect with the potential the transformational potential that exists within these symbols. If we have to individuate this chart and say that for every single one of us, we have these symbols in a house in our natal chart. So for me, it's moving through my 12th. What is the impact of Venus's transit to the 12th house going to reflect for you? So I could, help us with the story of seeing that Venus is essentially our inner and outer relationship to self. It's the way that we view ourselves inwardly, and it's conditioned by social structures and shaped by the idea of what you should be. And with the square to Chiron here at 29 degrees Pisces, like Jen was saying, this is a sensitivity around a woundedness that we have that wants to heal itself, where the separation and how separation through creating boundaries, in other words, where let me kind of make this more clearer. We have this inner relationship to self. Venus moves through Capricorn, and it points to where we have established defenses within our psyche to protect us, Capricorn protection, from experiences that essentially are painful, okay? Where we have been wounded, where that infinite field of Neptunian realm exists, and the pain of disempowerment, or the inner part of ourselves that we don't want to face because it's too painful to process, because we don't have tools, or we're unable to process, we don't know what to do with it, etc. This Venus squaring this Chiron is pointing to the transformational healing of seeing where defenses hold us from really accessing what is beneath the surface to be healed. So, like I said in the article that we wrote, and you can go check that out on our website, you'll see that Jen wrote about how this fear protects us, or this fear holds us. We put boundaries in place and barriers and sort of these walls in place, and we never get to truly access the depth of ourselves because of these structural things that we put in place, that in an unconscious way we do it because whatever exists beyond that surface that is in Aquarius, right, that is held within the subconscious, we don't know what to do with it. So here's the separation with Pisces, but yet Chiron is inviting us to kind of heal and subtly apply compassion to those areas, and to objectify Moon, Sun, Mercury in Aquarius, to objectify, right, to kind of subtly detach a little bit outside the boundary of our personal experience and observe the pain and observe the experience for what it is, and kind of just compassionately connect with it and just sit with it in a Capricornian way. These planetary energies of the South Node, Pluto and Saturn, they're all pointing to a huge convergence of where we need to clear out layers of emotions that at the point of when we experienced them protected us from what we could not understand. And so with Venus now squaring Chiron, and of course Saturn squaring Mars, now we have two personal planets here. We've got Venus as a personal planet, and we've got Mars as a personal planet, connecting to outer planets, transpersonal planets, Uranus, and we have Chiron here. So what about the deep space within us, this, not the ego self, but the spirit, like the deeper self, that is not existing within definition, does not have I, does not have possessions, but simply is a presence that I was talking about earlier, that wants to kind of live through us vicariously. What are those sort of personalities or stories wanting to come through to the surface into our physical realm, and for us to witness, feel, and sense, and then for us to understand or reflect on the depth that is inherently there? And it's in that realm of deeply reflecting on what those emotions are bringing us to the surface about, do we find not only an open-heartedness, but we're also able to begin unpacking very slowly parts of our emotional frozenness that, in a sense, again, hold us from truly experiencing the truth of what we are. So I'm replacing the word authenticity with truth. And authenticity is transparency. It's what's real for us. What is the truth? What is the true experience? So what is your true experience of yourself? And how much of that true experience do you actually get to feel, live, and digest in comparison to what types of personalities you need to create in order to exist within a world that up until this point in time has not really fully supported this type of communication or this type of communion with yourself, you know? So here you have this Mars squaring Pluto, right? And you've got Mars contacting Uranus. So again, we've got this personal planet of Mars hitting in the deepest unconscious sense of self that we have. You know, we can't even conceptualize the word the deep unconscious self, because it's, you know, the best way that I can explain this is if you're on a boat, a little small yacht, and you're on the surface, and all of a sudden there's this undercurrent that kind of moves the ocean into a direction, and your oars can't actually, you know, or whatever it is that you're using to kind of navigate yourself on the surface, it doesn't simply have the power or the depth to actually influence the way that the current is moving your ship or your boat. And so this is Pluto. It's this deeper undercurrent that is essentially moving through us that occasionally will come through to the surface and erupt. And when Pluto is squaring Mars, that eruption takes place. So Mars is pointing to us in this chart. There's something from our subconscious, conjunct Uranus, that is at a very deeper level wanting to come through to the surface for us to be sort of, in a sense, just witnessing with a compassionate self. And this witnessing of this emotion to the surface, this woundedness to the surface, allows us to access a deeper layer of who we are that goes beyond language. You know, this is what I think this Jupiter squaring Neptune is about, is going beyond language. You know, we're trying to sense it, we're trying to feel it, but we're not trying to go, oh, okay, it means this, because the moment that we kind of define it, we still kind of put it into a concept. It's just feeling that, and then what does it bring for you? Does it bring you sadness? Does it bring you a level of, you know, more compassion for whatever that emotion brings up for you is essential to just observe and to kind of feel into the experience and to acknowledge it as, okay, this is coming to the surface. So, you know, I thought about doing a Pluto square Mars video before this was happening to help us recognize that, you know, during this weekend, we're probably going to be reacting more than we're going to be responding. And for those of you that don't know, myself and Jen have started a podcast, and we have three episodes. Two of them are on that are available for free on the service called Podbean, which I'll give you guys links and show you towards it. And then we have another one that is specifically called Reaction versus Response, and it's a discussion that we have about the nature of this, and that's actually on our Patreon. So if you want to go and check that audio out, you can come over to our Patreon and you know, subscribe to the community, because we talked about that specifically of what is the relationship between reaction, which is a very Aries thing, and then how do we learn to respond to what that reaction was. And this is so much about this cardinal energy of Aries and Capricorn. You know, Capricorn is very much want to close things off. It wants to reflect. It's a very yin energy. So it wants to reflect. Whereas Mars wants to initiate. So when you've got these planetary energies of Mars squaring Pluto, we're going to be reacting to a lot. And so my question to you is, sort of post this Mars-Pluto square, what came up for you over the last 4 days that you noticed through frustration or anger or displacedness came to the surface that now you can begin processing as Mars now approaches Uranus and we get to liberate ourselves, Uranus, fracture and break free and change the pattern from these stories that we have inherently been telling ourselves that have been keeping us in the cycle of fear, or the cycle of not being able to action what we wanted, or to be the thing that is really wanting to live through us, which as I explained earlier in the conversation, the thing that wants to live through us, the essence of what wants to live through us is so diverse that it's not just one, it's multiple aspects of ourselves. Aquarius just wants to reveal to us that beyond the realm of Saturn, there is quantifiable reality. It's everything's existing in different states and different spaces, and that they are not linear. It's like when you look at the sky, for instance, we see the sky as the stars just being in, sort of imprinted against this black imagery. But really, if you had to actually travel to a star, you would notice that one star and another star that perceived themselves as looking right next to each other are actually like so far apart in this interdimensional play. And that is the essence of what we really are, and we're kind of opening up to that process. And these energies are pushing that to awaken us in this sense. Okay, so I hope that provided with something. If you sort of liked this video, or if you felt that there was something really, really cool with it, I'd really love to hear your comments, or share with me your experience. By the way, that's always amazing to listen to. Okay, so thanks very much, guys. I wanted to just draw your attention to two things. Firstly, that we are on the 16th and 17th of February, okay, of this month, 16th and 17th of February, and I'll put the details in the description below. There is a free introduction to evolutionary astrology course that I'll be holding, and the main prerogative with this course over here is to ultimately open us up to depth, right? It's to introduce us to looking at the way that we can look at our astrology chart and see the depth of it. So this is happening on the 16th and 17th. The details are in the description as well as the comments. You can go and sign up to have yourself or sign up for that. So that's happening, and I encourage you all to go check that out. And like I said, there's a podcast. You can follow us. The link is in the description. It's called Podbean. We've got a podcast. We've got the Soul's Journey and Following the Uranian Synchronicities. I encourage you to go check that out and to go and follow us on Podbean so that you can get the updates consistently. And as well, if you feel like you want to support Raising Vibrations and the work that we do, and you want to join that community on Patreon, which is another link in the description below, we are currently creating content for our patrons over there. So, okay. All right, my friends, thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you in the free course. I hope to see you listening to our podcast. And if you're feeling inspired and want to support in some way, come over to Patreon, okay? All right, everybody, take care.